The hospital doors flew open as Tiana stumbled inside, her arms wrapped tightly around RenJun's limp body. "Please, someone help him," she cried out, her voice breaking. Nurses rushed forward, pulling him from her grasp. His head lolled against the stretcher, blood trickling faintly from the corner of his mouth. The hallway buzzed with chaos. White coats, metallic carts, echoing footsteps. She stood frozen, her chest heaving as she watched them wheel him away, disappearing behind double doors marked ICU. Her trembling fingers were still sticky with his blood. A nurse approached, voice steady. "Ma'am, you need to calm down." "I didn't do anything to him," Tiana cut in quickly, her tone too defensive, too desperate. He collapsed, I swear he just..." Before the nurse could respond, a familiar voice sliced through the noise. "Tiana." Her head snapped up. RenJun stood a few feet away, dressed impeccably, eyes wide with shock, but behind that, something colder lingered. He moved closer, pretending to be concerned. "What happened to my brother?" "They're inside with him," she said, her voice trembling. "He was fine this morning and then suddenly he started coughing blood. He didn't wait for her to finish. Coughing blood." His gaze swept her up and down, lingering on her stained hands. "And what were you doing when that happened?" Tiana blinked. "What kind of question is that?" He tilted his head slightly, tone calm but cutting. "It's simple. You were alone with him, weren't you? You cooked for him, didn't you?" Her stomach dropped. Are you accusing me?" RenJun sighed deeply, rubbing his temple like a man tired of lies. "You can't blame me for wondering, Tiana. My brother suddenly collapses after dinner. A dinner you made. And just a few days ago he changed his will, leaving half of his properties to you. Don't you think that's convenient?" Gasps rippled from nearby nurses and guards. Tiana felt the world tilt. "That's not true. You're twisting things." "Oh." His eyes gleamed. "You're saying you didn't make his meal?" "I did, but that doesn't mean you didn't poison him?" He cut in sharply, his calm mask cracking. "Maybe it was revenge. After all, my brother once hurt you in school, didn't he? Everyone knows that story by now. Maybe this marriage was his way of apologizing, and maybe you thought an apology wasn't enough." "Stop it." Her voice shook, eyes glistening. "You're lying. I would never hurt him." But RenJun stepped closer, lowering his voice to a venomous whisper. "You always play innocent, don't you? But tell me, Tiana, what else would make a woman like you agree to marry into this family? Or power?" She flinched as if slapped. "You're disgusting." His smirk widened slightly. "Maybe. But I'm not the one whose fingerprints are on the glass he drank from." Tiana's breath hitched. "You went into the house?" "I went where I needed to," he said smoothly. "You should have cleaned better." The words stung like acid. People had stopped moving around them. Whispers filled the corridor. Cameras flashed. Someone had already started recording. Tiana straightened her shoulders, forcing her tears back. "You're the one who should be under suspicion," she said coldly. "You pretend to care, but I've seen what you really are. Maybe you should ask yourself who benefits if RenJun dies." RenJun's eyes darkened for a second, but then the fake warmth returned. "You should be careful, sister-in-law," he murmured. "Accusing people without proof can be dangerous. Especially when your husband isn't here to defend you." That one sentence pierced her like a knife. Before she could respond, a nurse stepped out of the ICU doors. "Please," the woman said softly. "You both need to calm down. The patient is still unconscious." RenJun turned toward her instantly, his tone dripping with false politeness. "Of course. Thank you, nurse. We'll cooperate." Then he looked back at Tiana, his expression unreadable. "Don't leave town, Tiana. The doctors will be running toxicology reports." Tiana's eyes widened. You're making it sound like a police case." "Isn't it?" he said quietly, and then he walked away, his shoes clicking sharply against the floor. She stood there shaking, her breath uneven. Around her, strangers whispered, phones still raised. Her vision blurred with tears as she caught a glimpse of herself in the window, disheveled, blood-stained, and broken. And somewhere behind her she heard the faint click of a camera shutter. Deep down she knew he was behind this. The thought alone made her chest ache. She wiped the tears from her cheeks and forced her legs to move toward RenJun's room. When she reached the door she tried the handle, it was locked. Her heart dropped. The curtains were drawn too, hiding whatever was happening inside. As she turned, whispers rose behind her like a swarm of bees. People passing by slowed their steps, stealing glances, shaking their heads in quiet judgment. She could feel every stare burn into her skin. She lowered her head, pretending not to notice, gripping her hands together so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Foreigner," someone murmured under their breath. The word hit her harder than she expected. Her throat tightened and she swallowed hard, fighting the lump rising inside. Then she saw RenJun across the hall. His expression had changed, cold, distant, nothing like before. Her lips trembled. "RenJun," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. He looked at her, eyes sharp with something between anger and disgust. "You shouldn't be here," he said flatly. Her chest tightened again and her tears threatened to fall all over. "I just wanted to see him," she said quietly, voice shaking. But he didn't answer. He just turned away, leaving her standing there, alone, surrounded by eyes that wouldn't stop watching. The ride back home felt endless. Tiana sat in the backseat of the car, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and white through the rain-streaked window. Her hands were trembling in her lap, faint smudges of RenJun's blood still on her fingers. She tried to wash them off at the hospital sink, but it felt like it had soaked deeper than skin, like it had stained her soul. Her chest hurt. Her mind was spinning. She'd done everything she could. She'd called the ambulance, shouted for help, held his head when he was barely breathing. And now RenJun had turned it all into poison. "Poison," she whispered under her breath, shaking her head in disbelief. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She ignored it, staring numbly out the window as the car slowed to a stop in front of the Jeon estate. The tall iron gates opened soundlessly, and the mansion loomed ahead, grand, cold, and intimidating in the night rain. She stepped out, feeling the wet wind slap her face, and walked inside. The moment she entered, the atmosphere shifted. The staff who had once smiled warmly at her now avoided her eyes. A few bowed stiffly, others whispered as she passed. Tiana could feel it. The rumor had already reached them. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble floor, echoing through the empty hall. She went straight to her room, not trusting her voice. As soon as the door shut behind her, she let herself crumble for a moment. She sank to the floor, her back pressed against the door, tears silently falling down her face. Her phone kept vibrating in her purse. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of notifications. Finally, with shaky fingers, she pulled it out. One look at the screen and her breath stopped. A video. She tapped it open. And there she was, standing in the hospital hallway, shouting, her eyes wide and furious. RenJun's voice thundered in the background. The camera shook as people gasped and nurses tried to intervene. The angle caught her face perfectly, disheveled, panicked, defensive. Cut. The video ended abruptly, right before RenJun's sneer, right before she'd said anything else. Tiana's hands went cold. She scrolled down. The video was everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, even news blogs. The captions were brutal. Jeon, RenJun's wife, caught screaming after poisoning scandal? Was it revenge? Former victim turns Mafia heiress accused of betrayal. The cursed marriage. Jeon family at war again. Hundreds of comments. Thousands of shares. She saw her own photo. One of her wedding pictures, smiling in that silk veil. Now used in memes, videos, edits. Her throat tightened painfully. She tried to breathe but her chest constricted. "This can't be happening," she whispered, clutching the phone. "This can't." A sharp knock came on her door. "Madam," one of the maid's timid voices called, "there are reporters outside the gate." Tiana froze. "Reporters?" she repeated, barely above a whisper. "Yes, ma'am. They say it's about the video, and about Mr. RenJun's condition." Her blood turned to ice. She forced herself to stand, legs trembling. "Tell them nothing," she said through clenched teeth. "And if anyone opens those gates..." She didn't finish the sentence. Her voice broke. She couldn't even sound like herself anymore. When the maid left, she stumbled toward the vanity mirror. Her reflection stared back, eyes red and swollen, hair tangled, face pale. She didn't recognize the woman looking back at her. A stranger wearing her skin. Someone broken. She threw the phone onto the bed and sank into the chair, gripping the edges of the table until her knuckles turned white. Every second her phone buzzed with another notification, her name trending, the world tearing her apart. Then her mind replayed that hospital scene. Not the video version but the truth. RenJun's face twisted in anger, his words sharp like blades. You made his last meal. You knew what you were doing. Revenge, wasn't it? You wanted to pay him back for what happened in school. My brother married you out of guilt. Now look what you've done. She could still see the nurses' shocked faces, the way everyone had stared at her like she was a monster. And now the entire world had seen it too. Tiana buried her face in her hands, shaking. The humiliation burned deeper than any wound. They were destroying her. Again. First the past, then the marriage, now this. A cold fury began to replace the hurt. Slowly she lowered her hands and looked up. Her reflection still looked fragile, but her eyes had changed. No, she whispered. Not again. She stood pacing the room. She thought of RenJun lying unconscious in the hospital, and how she didn't even know if he was going to wake up. She thought of RenJun standing there smirking as he accused her. She thought of whoever had pulled out a phone, filmed her worst moment and sold it to the internet for a story. The betrayal clawed at her chest. He picked up the phone again, scrolled through the comments and noticed something. The video was first uploaded by an anonymous account. The watermark read, @ksecrets, a gossip page known for leaks, scandals and inside information on Korea's underground elite. Someone from inside the hospital must have sent it. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She didn't know who yet, but she would find out. And when she did, he would not forgive them. Tiana didn't sleep. All night she sat on the edge of her bed, the glow of her phone screen flickering across her face. Every few minutes she refreshed her feed, waiting, hoping for the video to disappear. It never did. Until morning. When she finally woke from a light doze, her phone was silent. She opened it again, her heartbeat thudding painfully. The video was gone, every copy of it. Deleted. Even the gossip page that first posted it had vanished from the internet like it had never existed. Tiana blinked, confused. What the hell? She searched again, reloaded. Nothing. No trace. The relief she expected didn't come. Instead, unease coiled in her stomach. Videos like that didn't just vanish. Someone powerful had erased it. And in this house, there was only one man capable of that. Her hands clenched in her lap. He wasn't doing it to protect her, she knew that much. He was protecting himself. A knock sounded at her door. She turned sharply. Who is it? It's Park, came the familiar, gentle voice. Tiana opened the door. The old maid looked uneasy, her wrinkled hands fidgeting against her apron. Madam, she said softly, Mr. RenJun sent a message. You're not allowed to visit the hospital. No one is. Tiana's breath caught. What? He said Mr. RenJun's condition is critical. Until the investigation is over, no visitors. Tiana froze in disbelief. No. That can't be right. I'm his wife. Mrs. Park's eyes lowered. I know, madam. But the guards have strict orders. They won't even let me deliver flowers. The words hit her like stones. Her throat tightened, her eyes burning as tears threatened to spill. So that's it? I can't even see him. I'm sorry, Mrs. Park whispered. When the maid left, Tiana's knees gave way. She sank to the floor, pressing her palms against her mouth to stifle a sob. RenJun was fighting for his life, and she was being treated like the enemy. She tried to call the hospital herself, but the receptionist said she wasn't allowed to receive updates without RenJun's authorization. Even the bodyguards outside refused to speak to her except for one, Jay, the youngest. He hesitated before whispering, He's stable, but not waking up. They say it's serious, madam. That was all she got. Tiana spent the rest of the day pacing the mansion like a ghost. The house was colder now. Every hallway echoed with silence. The staff avoided her eyes, afraid to even greet her. By evening she couldn't take it anymore. She went downstairs to the surveillance room, a small space tucked behind the east wing where the estate's cameras were monitored. The security chief wasn't there, only a young guard half asleep in his chair. When he noticed her, he immediately stood up. Madam, you're not allowed. Please, she interrupted, her voice trembling. I just need to see something. It's important. The guard hesitated, then nodded reluctantly and logged her in. Tiana scanned through the feed, her heart pounding as she rewound the footage from 2 days ago, the day RenJun fell sick. There she was on the screen, standing in the kitchen wearing her apron, humming softly as she stirred the stew. The same meal she'd made for him before everything went wrong. Her eyes filled with tears as she watched herself move across the screen, blissfully unaware of what was to come. She stayed glued to the footage, every second, every frame. No one entered after her. No shadow, no visitor, nothing suspicious. The kitchen stayed empty after she served the meal. She frowned, confusion tightening her chest. No one came in. So how? If no one poisoned the food, how did it happen? She replayed the video slower this time, minute by minute. And then she noticed something. A gap. Between 1 second and the next, the footage jumped. A missing frame. She leaned closer. The timestamp skipped forward exactly 4 minutes. What the? She whispered, her pulse spiking. In the scene right before the cut, she'd been reaching for something. A jar. Then heading toward the storage room. When the footage resumed, she was already back, stirring the pot again like nothing had happened. But she remembered going to the storage room. She'd been gone longer than a few seconds, maybe 5 minutes, searching for spices. Why was that part missing? Who deleted it? Her breath quickened. She clicked back, scanning for any sign of editing, and that's when a sound from upstairs made her freeze. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming down the hallway toward her. She quickly closed the footage window, turned off the monitor, and slipped behind the half-open door. The footsteps grew louder, and then she heard his voice. Her stomach twisted into knots. Yes, the hospital, he was saying, his voice low but sharp. No, he's still alive. The doctor said he's holding on. Pause. His tone hardened. Then make sure he doesn't. I don't care how you do it. An overdose, a power failure, whatever it takes. He's already half dead. Finish the job. Tiana's eyes widened. Her breath hitched painfully in her throat. He continued, his tone calm, too calm. And once he's gone, you know what to do next. He's next. I don't want her breathing when this is over. He gave her half of it, and I'm not sharing a damn thing with anyone. Tiana's hands flew to her mouth to stop herself from gasping. Her heart hammered so loudly she thought he'd hear it. Her knees felt weak, her whole body trembling. It was him. It was RenJun. He'd poisoned his own brother and planned to kill her next. She pressed back against the wall, trying not to move, not to breathe. Good, he said finally, his footsteps turning away. Call me when it's done. The moment his voice faded, Tiana slid down to the floor, shaking violently. Her vision blurred with tears as reality crashed down on her like thunder. She'd been living under the same roof as her husband's killer. And he wasn't done yet. She had no evidence. The CCTV was tampered with, the video of their fight gone. Everything was being erased piece by piece. But she couldn't just hide anymore. Wiping her tears, she stood on unsteady legs and whispered to herself, if no one's going to fight for him, then I will. Her next step was clear. She had to get to the hospital before RenJun's men did. The moment RenJun's footsteps disappeared, Tiana bolted from the hallway. Her mind raced, panic clashing with adrenaline. She had to leave. No. There wasn't time to think, just move. She ran upstairs, grabbed her coat and a hoodie, tied her curls tightly, and shoved her phone into her pocket. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it might break through her ribs. If RenJun was serious, and she knew he was, then RenJun might not last the night. Every shadow in the mansion suddenly felt alive, watching her. She crept past the sleeping staff quarters, avoiding the main hall where 2 guards stood. Through the kitchen door, she found the narrow back exit that opened into the garden. The night was cold and biting. The air smelled of rain and asphalt. She ran barefoot across the gravel path, her breath catching in the dark. A black car rolled past the front gate. 2 of RenJun's men, she recognized their faces from the estate. Her chest seized. They were heading in the same direction she planned to go. To the hospital. She waited until their headlights disappeared before she darted down the hill, her feet scraping against stones. She flagged a cab outside the gates, waving frantically. The driver squinted at her. You okay, miss? Just drive, she said, breathless. Seoul Central Hospital. Please hurry. He glanced at her trembling hands but didn't ask questions. The drive felt endless. Every red light was agony, every turn slower than she could stand. Her mind replayed RenJun's words on a loop. Finish the job. He's next. She tightened her arms around herself, whispering under her breath, please don't let him die. When the cab finally screeched to a stop, she threw some bills at the driver and ran toward the hospital entrance. Two of RenJun's bodyguards stood outside the ICU floor, the same ones she'd seen before. "Tiana," one of them said, stepping forward. "You're not allowed." She grabbed his arm, desperate. "Please. You have to listen to me. He's in danger." They exchanged a look. "We know his condition is serious." "No," she interrupted, her voice shaking. "He's not dying from the poison. Someone's trying to kill him, RenJun." Both men stiffened. One frowned. "That's a serious accusation." "I heard him," she cried. "Just now at the mansion. He was on the phone giving orders to finish RenJun off tonight. You think I'd come here in the middle of the night to lie?" The guards hesitated, clearly torn. One finally said, "Wait here." He disappeared through the restricted doors. Tiana's knees went weak. She leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. Nurses rushed past with trays and carts. Machines beeped faintly behind closed doors. But to her it all sounded distant, like she was underwater. Minutes stretched like hours. Then a sudden clatter echoed from the far end of the hallway. She turned sharply and froze. Her pulse jumped. They hadn't seen her yet. Without thinking, she darted into a side corridor, nearly tripping over a cleaning cart. She crouched behind it, pressing her hand over her mouth as the sound of footsteps grew closer. She swallowed hard, every nerve screaming. The corridor lights flickered once, and in that flicker she saw something move. A reflection in the glass window. A guard was turning the corner. She waited until he was almost beside her, then shoved the cart forward with all her strength. It slammed into him, knocking him off balance. She bolted down the hall, the other shouting behind her, "Stop her!" Her feet pounded against the tiles, echoing like thunder. A nurse screamed as Tiana raced past, nearly crashing into a stretcher. She didn't look back. The elevator was too far. She turned for the emergency stairs and pushed through the door, taking the steps 3 at a time. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't stop. She burst through the fire exit on the second floor and ran straight into one of RenJun's guards. He grabbed her shoulders. Tiana sighed. "What?" "There's no time," she gasped. "They're here. RenJun's men, they're going to kill him." Before he could respond, the door below slammed open. The two black-suited men were coming up. "Go," she yelled. The guard spun, drawing his gun. "Get to the ICU now." She ran. 2 men in black suits were walking toward her. She recognized them immediately, RenJun's personal guards. The corridor blurred as adrenaline took over. Her mind screamed only one thing: reach RenJun. She turned the corner just as one of the men fired. The bullet shattered a wall light above her, showering sparks. She ducked and kept running. Finally, she reached the glass doors of the ICU. 2 more guards inside recognized her and yanked the door open. "Tiana SSI." She stumbled in, gasping. "Lock it. Now." They slammed the doors shut as the pursuing men reached the end of the hall. One raised his gun again, but a bodyguard's warning shot sent them ducking. The alarms went off, red lights flashing. Nurses screamed. And in the chaos, Tiana turned to the hospital bed. RenJun lay motionless under the white sheets, his skin pale, tubes running from his arms and chest. She choked back a sob, rushing to his side. "RenJun, please wake up. Please." His eyelids fluttered faintly. Maybe just a trick of the machines, maybe hope. The guards barricaded the door as police sirens wailed in the distance. Tiana pressed his hand between hers, whispering through tears. Tiana didn't move. She stayed beside RenJun, trembling but unbroken, her tears streaking her cheeks. "He's not going to do anything, so don't worry. RenJun is fine." Tiana's head shot up at the sound of the voice. Her breath caught in her throat as she turned toward the hospital bed. The white curtains shifted slightly from the air conditioning, and beneath them she saw him, or who she thought was him, lying still, eyes half open, lips pale. For a heartbeat, her chest filled with relief. "He's alive, he's really alive." She took a shaky step forward, hands trembling. Her heart pounded so loud she could barely hear herself breathe. "RenJun," she whispered, voice cracking. You're awake?" The man on the bed tilted his head slightly, his lips curving into a faint, tired smile. "I told you," he murmured, voice weak but calm, "I'm fine." Something about that voice froze her mid-step. It was familiar yet wrong. The tone lacked that sharp, commanding edge RenJun always had, even in his softest moments. This one was flat, distant, empty. Tiana's brows drew together. She leaned closer, scanning his face under the white hospital light. The features looked the same jawline, same lips, but there was something off about the eyes. RenJun's eyes were cold, cutting but alive. This man's eyes were dull. Her stomach twisted. "RenJun," she said softly, her fingers tightening on the metal bed rail. "Look at me." The man smiled again, too easily this time. "Everything's fine now. You should rest." Her heart stopped. Every instinct in her screamed that something was wrong. The air suddenly felt colder, heavier. Her skin prickled as she stared at him, her voice trembling. "You're not RenJun." The fake RenJun blinked slowly, not even bothering to deny it. Instead, he just turned his face away from her and said flatly, "He's fine. You don't need to worry." Her breath hitched. The room started spinning. What do you mean he's fine? Where is he?" He said nothing. "Where is he?" Her voice rose, breaking with fear. "What did you do to him? Where is my husband?" But the man only closed his eyes as though the conversation was already over. Tiana's knees weakened. She stumbled back, hand pressed to her chest as tears filled her eyes. "No, this isn't real." Her gaze darted between his face and the door, her breathing ragged. The beeping monitor echoed like a countdown. Every sound felt too loud, every silence even louder. Her mind was spinning. If that wasn't RenJun, then where is he? The marble foyer swallowed RenJun's boots like an audience holding its breath. He walked in slow, deliberate, each step measuring the space between him and the men who'd been busy rearranging his world. RenJun, who had been lounging with a glass of vindictive composure, straightened as the door closed behind him. For a single stunned second the room held. A tableau, then fury cracked across RenJun's face. "You," he began, words stumbling out like a man whose script had been stolen from him. "You were dead." "How?" RenJun didn't answer. He lifted his hand and the little flash drive glinted under the chandelier light. Looked tiny in his fingers and enormous in meaning. "I know what you did," he said, voice even and cold. "You poisoned my food. You thought you could pretend you were the grieving brother while you finished what you started. You were wrong." RenJun barked laughter that had no humor in it. "You have nothing. A stick of memory, what does that even prove? This is a family business. You threaten me with a stick? You think I'll bow to you?" RenJun's smile was unreadable and slow, like ice melting into water. "This stick proves things. It proves that you sent a man with a syringe, that you were in the kitchen when I fell, that you discussed motive with your men. It proves your fingerprints where they should not be." The room shifted. Servants had backed away, guards had hardened into silhouettes. Even the chandelier seemed to hang a hair's breadth closer. RenJun's words landed like precise blades. RenJun's face flushed with the sudden realization that his stage was collapsing. "You can hand that to the police," RenJun spat, trying to salvage bravado. "You'll ruin the family name, Jun. Are you naive enough to think that's justice?" RenJun's laugh was a small thing. "An arrest would be too easy. Jail is a word in a sentence. You killed a man, my father, and you would have done the same to me if I'd stayed weak. I don't want to see you disappear into cells. I want you to feel what you took." He paused, eyes locked on RenJun's, the promise in his voice black and certain. "I'll break you differently. I'll make you watch yourself burn in ways the law cannot measure." RenJun's rage snapped into words sharper than knives. Insults, threats, a litany of ugly things spat like venom. He surged toward RenJun, but RenJun's guards, silent, practiced, closed in with a controlled, ruthless efficiency. Hands bound, protests choked, RenJun found himself moved, escorted, shoved toward the front doors like a man being ejected from his own life. RenJun didn't gloat. He watched the man he'd once called brother being led away. When the doors clicked shut on RenJun's final glare, RenJun let out a breath that could have been a laugh or a release of something darker. Then, soft as the hush after storm, Tiana's voice sliced across the corridor. "RenJun." She came running, breathless, tears carving tracks through the grime of fear on her face. The sight of him, alive, solid, unbroken, unzipped the last of her restraint. She ran the distance in 3 strides and threw herself at him, arms wrapping around his waist like vines desperate for soil. He turned and she felt the world stop on his chest. He held her as if to physically make sure she was real, fingers threading into the hair at the base of her neck. She sobbed into him, the sound hollow and relieved and desperate. "You scared me to death," she cried into his shirt. "If I hadn't warned you, if I hadn't—" Her words broke into a messy tangle of apologies and accusations and raw gratitude. "You did warn me," he murmured, his voice soft against her ear. "You saved me." His hands tightened, then relaxed as if choosing how much to let on. "You have no idea what that meant." She pulled back to look at him, eyes red and shining. "Tell me everything. Tell me you're fine. Tell me he's gone." Her voice trembled on the last word. RenJun's mouth quirked, a private, dangerous expression. "I'm fine," he said simply. "He won't threaten us again." He touched her cheek with the tip of his thumb, gentler than she expected. "I'm sorry I left you in the dark." "You left me to drown," she snapped, though the fingers at her temple betrayed nothing but relief. "Don't you ever do that again." He kissed her then, hungry and forgiving, a long press that said what words could not. The kiss deepened, the world narrowing until there was only the press of mouth and warmth. It was not a possessive showman's kiss. It was two people clinging to each other after a storm. They didn't stop when others coughed politely or when a guard cleared his throat. They didn't care. When they broke apart, breathless, the hush in the room felt like permission. Later that night, behind locked doors and with the house mercifully quiet, the city's buzzing lights smearing the windows, they let themselves be merely human. The sex that followed was urgent and raw and shut the world out. It tasted like survival and fear and relief. It stayed private in the telling. Warm sheets, soft skin, the quiet weight of two bodies mapping safety into each other. When dawn came and sunlight smeared gold across their skin, they lay tangled, the thin after-hours quiet between them. RenJun was the first to speak, voice low, eyes serious in the hush. "I saw him," he said. "I watched him do it." Tiana's breath stilled. Her fingers tightened in the blanket. "How?" He turned slightly, the light catching the scar at his temple. "I didn't stay weak. I staged what you saw. I put someone in the bed at the hospital to buy me time. I watched him in the kitchen that night. He put something tiny into my bowl with his own hand. Someone trained to do cruel things does it easily. He wore a mask when he stirred the plate in front of me that day, one of those theatrical props. I watched him throw it away when I pretended to leave. The red on the napkin? Wine. Dramatic but not deadly. Only someone callous enough to kill would pour poison the way he did." She made a disgusted sound. "He's sick. He's dangerous," RenJun corrected. "And lucky I didn't trust the usual ropes. I tasted the wine, smelled the ash he left in the sink. I followed him. I had him on camera. The flash drive has everything." He swallowed. "You could have died." He offered a small dry smile. "Then you would have been right to hate me for leaving. But you wouldn't have been able to fight him." She leaned in, forehead to his. "Be careful next time," she whispered. "Poison is a coward's weapon. It could have actually killed you." "I know," he said. "And I know what I did was dangerous too." He paused, looking at her with an intensity that made her toes curl. "About RenJun. I won't pretend I won't finish this. I won't be surprised if one morning you hear he's dead." Her breath snagged on the words, cold and distant. She searched his face for softness, for a sign he was joking. He only held her gaze with a steady, unblinking look. She said nothing. The room hummed with the aftermath. Danger averted for now, vengeance promised for the future. Outside, the city blinked and turned on. Inside, in the quiet between breaths, Tiana let sleep take her, fragile and relieved, and for the first time since the wedding, not entirely alone. From that day onward, life began to feel like something out of a dream for Tiana. The storms that once haunted her heart slowly calmed, replaced by the warmth of a home filled with laughter, love, and peace. She and RenJun started living as true husband and wife. The walls that once held tension and unspoken pain now echoed with soft giggles and quiet conversations. RenJun had changed. His once cold, guarded eyes softened each time he looked at her. He still carried his pride and power, but with her he was gentle, patient, and human. Each morning he would wake before her, kiss her forehead and whisper, "You're safe now." And every night he'd hold her like she was something too precious to ever lose again. Weeks passed, and one bright morning, Tiana stood in front of the mirror, staring at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands. Two bold lines stared back at her. Her breath caught. She pressed a hand to her belly, tears filling her eyes. The thought of carrying RenJun's child, of creating life out of everything they'd endured, felt surreal. When she told him that evening, RenJun froze for a moment, disbelief flickering across his face. Then without a word he pulled her into his arms and laughed. Really laughed, for the first time in so long. He kissed her over and over, his hands protectively resting on her waist. "You've just given me another reason to live," he whispered against her hair. Months went by in gentle waves. RenJun became more overprotective than ever, refusing to let her lift a finger. Every craving, every mood swing he endured with a patience that made her fall for him even more. Then one day she finally picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in months. When her father's voice answered, shaky and unsure, Tiana's eyes welled up. "Appa, it's me," she said softly. There was silence at first, then a sob on the other end. She invited him to dinner that weekend. The reunion was everything she had hoped for. Her father cried when he saw her glowing with life, and RenJun, in an unexpected show of humility, bowed respectfully to him. Over a quiet meal the air felt light again, like old wounds were finally healing. 9 months later Tiana gave birth to twin boys. RenJun had never cried before, but that day he did. He held the tiny bundles close, one in each arm, whispering promises they wouldn't understand for years. Their home was finally filled with peace. No secrets. No revenge. Just love. Sometimes Tiana would watch him play with their sons in the garden. The once feared Mafia heir now on his knees, laughing as his children tugged at his sleeves, and she would smile. She had survived hell and found heaven in the same man. And for the first time in a long, long while she believed in happy endings. Thank you all so much for watching this beautiful story from episode 1 all the way to the end. I'd really love to hear your thoughts and opinions about the story in the comments. Your support means so much to me. And I'm truly sorry for the delays in releasing each episode. From now on, I'll be uploading everything together or on the same day so you can enjoy the full story without waiting. Thank you once again for all your love and support.